Today, we're talking about updates on the Baltimore bridge that collapsed, Sam Bankman-Fried being sentenced to 25 years in prison, baseball's opening day, and other top news for Friday, March 29th. We're taking Monday off to celebrate an empty tomb, but we'll be back on Wednesday. Stay informed while remaining focused on Christ with the pour-over today. Here's the quote of the day. Christ the Lord is risen, our joy that hath no end. St. John of Damascus. Let's get started with some espresso shots. The work is just beginning following the Francis Scott Key Bridge's collapse. 2 bodies were recovered Wednesday, and 4 more people are presumed dead following a cargo ship's collision with the Baltimore bridge. Further recovery efforts are paused while debris is cleared. The National Transportation Safety Board is beginning a 12 to 24-month investigation into what happened on board the ship and the structure of the bridge. Maryland's governor promised a full evaluation of the state's fracture-critical bridges. Meanwhile, the Port of Baltimore, which handles more cars than any other port in the U.S., is shuttered indefinitely, raising alarm bells in the auto industry. Transportation Secretary Buttigieg met Thursday with key supply chain operators to develop a plan to mitigate disruptions. Rebuilding is expected to take years and cost up to $4 billion. Here's a verse to consider when your neighbor is mourning. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort. He comforts us in all our affliction, so that we may be able to comfort those who are in any kind of affliction through the comfort we ourselves receive from God. 2 Corinthians 1, 3, and 4. Crypto's former king was sentenced to 25 years in prison yesterday. In November, Sam Bankman-Fried, SBF, was convicted of stealing $8 billion customers had deposited in his cryptocurrency exchange, FXT, and making risky bets with it. Prosecutors requested SBF be sentenced to 40 to 50 years in prison for one of the largest financial frauds in history. SBF's defense had requested a 6.5-year sentence, asking for leniency because customers may actually recoup their money thanks to a rebound in cryptocurrency prices. Bitcoin is near its all-time high, up 60% this year. The federal judge seemed unswayed, criticizing SBF for lacking remorse and expressing concern that the 32-year-old may commit crimes again. He also fined SBF $11 billion and authorized the government to seize assets in order to repay victims. The Bible warns us over and over about the danger of feeding an insatiable desire for wealth. Fight that greed by exercising your generosity muscles, making a habit of an open-handed approach to all God's gifts. 1 Chronicles 29, 11 and 14 says, Yours, Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the splendor and the majesty. For everything in the heavens and on earth belongs to you. But who am I and who are my people that we should be able to give as generously as this? For everything comes from you, and we have given you only what comes from your own hand. For baseball fans, there are no 2 more beautiful words: opening day. Though the season technically kicked off in South Korea last week, where the Dodgers and Padres each won a game, most teams began play yesterday. The season's big stories include a few modest rule changes, including a wider running lane to first base and a shorter pitch clock when runners are on base. The Yankees' new slugger, outfielder Juan Soto. Will he make the difference in getting them back to the playoffs? And the gambling scandal involving Shohei Ohtani's interpreter, which is under investigation. The Dodgers entered the season as favorites to win the World Series this year, followed by the Atlanta Braves. The World Series champion Texas Rangers unveiled their championship banner before yesterday's game, then took on the Cubs. Sports are fun and a great diversion, but can also become an obsession. Keep your affections with Jesus, allowing your hobbies to be hobbies, and keep everything in its proper place. Hebrews 12, verse 2 says, "Keeping our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith." What would you do if you were falsely accused of murder? For Hannah Overton, that question isn't hypothetical. Hannah was a regular mom of 4 in Texas when, out of the blue, she was falsely accused of murder. Hannah was shocked by the lies, and as a firm believer, she knew that God would come to her rescue and never let those rumors spread. But the exact opposite happened. Hannah eventually stood before a jury of her peers and heard them sentence her to life in prison. This was a terrible mistake. How could God have let her down? But Hannah would soon discover that God had a plan all of his own. Listen to Hannah's entire story on episode number 16 on the Compelled podcast, titled "Falsely Accused of Murder and Sentenced to Life in Prison." Listen on your podcast app or at compelledpodcast.com. In other brews, here's a rapid round of updates. Disney and DeSantis are finally feeling the love tonight. After a 2-year squabble over control of Walt Disney World's tax district, they finally reached a settlement. WDW President Jeff Vall said the agreement opens a new chapter of constructive engagement. Governor DeSantis said his administration has been vindicated for the legal action it took. Former Connecticut Senator Joe Lieberman died Wednesday at 82. A moderate Democrat, he was his party's VP nominee in 2000, becoming the first Jew on a major party presidential ticket. In 2006, he won his Senate re-election as an independent. After retiring, Lieberman served as founding chairman of the centrist No Labels Party leading up to the 2024 election. Driving in NYC just got pricier. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority approved controversial new congestion tolls that charge cars $15 to enter downtown Manhattan during the day. Prices vary by type of vehicle and drop significantly at night. The MTA said it had to do something big to raise the $1 billion needed per year to upgrade the city's deteriorating subway system. Never mind. NBC fired former Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel just days after hiring her as a political analyst. Her abrupt exit followed vocal protests by NBC's on-air hosts, who criticized McDaniel's comments on the 2020 election and January 6th. NBC is now facing backlash for underrepresenting conservatives. Ever find a surprise $20 in your pocket? South Carolina officials just found an account that's collected $1.8 billion over the past decade, but no one knows who's been funding it or why. Last year, the state's top accountant resigned after a $3.5 billion clerical error on paper only. So it might be time for a QuickBooks refresher. And that's all we have for today. Thanks so much for listening. If you're listening on the Apple Podcasts app, give us a 5-star rating and drop a review. If you're listening on Spotify, give us a follow and hit the notification bell to never miss a new episode. We appreciate your support and hope you have a great weekend. We'll see you on Wednesday. Most social media sells your data, peppers you with ads, and curates divisive content. Not Tuvu. Tuvu is wholesome social media built and moderated with the whole family in mind. Choose social media that uplifts rather than drains. Check out Tuvu, that's Tuvu, at the link in our show notes.